You mentioned there's been a lot of ups and downs on this journey. I just mentioned you're 15-time world champion. Has there been times during that where you thought maybe it's over, or maybe it was an injury, or maybe where you're just questioning your journey? Tell me about those ups and downs.
Yeah, I mean, to question is it over or not? Not really. You know, I've had people ask me a lot. Obviously, I've been in the industry a little while now, and you get the question asked, you know, how much longer you got? You know, you're getting a little long in the tooth, and I just tell them, you know.
Well, my wife said you look like you're in your younger 20s.
Well, good. Thank you.
So
I'm glad I didn't take my hat off then.
So I was like, I said how old you were, and she's like, what? But so yeah, you don't look long in the tooth at all. Good. You look very young.
But for me, it's just, you know, this is where I truly feel God's calling for my life is, and I still feel young. I still feel, you know, active, and I'm craving it. And so for me, it's in God's timing. You know, stay in tune with Him, and you know, spiritually and physically, you know, balancing my why out, and you know, obviously, if I do that right, I feel that I'll know when it's time, but I don't see it coming up anytime really soon. But yeah, it's, you know, it's a game of inches. It's a game of highs and lows. Pretty much all my good friends in rodeo, they got some type of a story or testimony of overcoming an injury or going through an injury, and some injuries have been, you know, deathly, and some have been career-ending, and you know, that's a possibility. But you can't really worry and fret on that, because if you do, I think you get stuck, because then you start questioning what you're doing, what you're training for, and or the fundamentals of the event or sport. And when I was really young, like I said, I started when I was 12, and honestly, I can honestly say I didn't know what fear or nerves or anything was at, you know, all the way up in my early teens. I grew up with two older brothers. One was 9 years older than me. One was 4. So being the younger brother, you want to hang out with your brothers. Yeah. And but in order to hang out with your brothers, they were going to do everything they could to where you didn't want to hang out with them. Yeah. And so I credit a lot to them. Yeah. And you know, I got in a bad wreck when I was 14, 15. Kind of long story short there. Bull got my buddy down, Josh Ravinius, in the corner, and all I remember stepping in there and that bull swapping ends, and talking to Dad afterwards. That bull swapped ends and hemmed me up against the fence and knocked me out, busted my chin, broke a bunch of ribs, and pretty much played ping pong with me between his horns for a while. And as a young kid, that was pretty big effect on me mentally. You know, when I woke up, I was in an ambulance and I was sitting straight up, and they're trying to put a C-collar on me. Like I was pretty panicked, and it didn't set in too much then until I remember a couple weeks after that, we were in Baker, Montana, and that same bull come bucking out of the chutes. I was in the stands, and as soon as I seen what bull it was, for the first time in my life, I can really remember fear hitting me, and it was bad. And further down that next year, Dad used to put on a bull riding event in Cody, Wyoming, and he allowed me to work with the 2 other guys that he hired. And I can remember the first bull bucking out, and I stepped to him, and he wasn't even a mean bull. And when he locked eyes with me, I got stuck in my tracks. I got heavy legged. I couldn't move, and I ended up having to leave the arena. I couldn't work the rest of the bull ride, and you know, fear and nerves struck me so bad. And I left the arena, and there was still something about the rodeo world that kept pulling me back, and ended up. My parents were divorced at a young age, but so I lived with Mom for my first part, and then I moved in with Dad in high school. And like I told you earlier, you know, some of the hardest things you do in life turn out to be the best thing. And when I moved in with Dad, it allowed me to go to a rodeo Bible camp in Meeteetse, Wyoming, become a Champions Rodeo Camp. And I was going there with just pretty much the intentions of to fight bulls, try to get better, try to overcome my thoughts in my mind. And through going to that camp, it was literally a life changer. You know, I received Jesus as Lord and Savior in my life, and it truly started seeing that I had a purpose, and I had somebody that walked through life with me, and that I had you know, gifts and opportunities that you know, I had to trust in things and I had to have faith and believe. And from there, it just started growing, and you know, slowly, you know, picking up into what you would call the start of my career. And I can remember 3 or 4 months after that, Dad was working an event in Red Lodge, Montana, and we were just just about to start the bull ride, and then they're doing the national anthem, and it sounds a bit cliche, but we're standing there, and the nerves were hitting me a little bit. And he just looked over at me and said, "Son, if you're going to do this, you might as well try to be the best." And I could remember it was like it was yesterday, and went in there, and at the time, I probably felt like I put on my best performance I ever did in my life. But looking back at it now, it probably wasn't very good, but it was a big stepping stone for me.
It was like mentally,
yeah. To kind of, I stepped in there, overcome. Now we got something to work with, get the ball rolling, and from there, God was putting the right people in my life and the right opportunities, and we just kept chugging along. And it turned into a big career, and we come across a pretty big injury in the end of 2021. We're at the NFR, 9th round. One of my good buddies, Braden Richardson, he was pretty beat up all week, and he rode a really good bull. He ended up winning the go around that night. And he was pretty beat up enough to where he couldn't really dismount very good. And he just kind of come off that right side of that bull's shoulder, and wasn't much of a gap. And I stepped in there like I've done millions of times. And when that bull swung around to hook at me, he reached out with his front feet. And when he did, he stepped on the side of my leg and causing a compound fracture of my tib fibia. And, I knew it was a bad injury, but everybody in that arena could realize what just happened. It was one of them injuries where you didn't just know they were hurt. You knew how they were hurt. And when you got a body part dismangled in a manner that it's not naturally supposed to be, mentally it can really challenge you. And so for me on that, there's a picture that was floating around there. They were packing me out on the stretcher, and I had my hands on my head, and I could just remember looking around, gazing around the arena, and I just told myself, I'm not going to let this determine the last time I'm ever going to be here. And I just hung true to that. Normally after the finals, I stay pretty good on my nutrition and my work regimen, but usually you're coming into the holidays and Christmas, and you kind of, fall off the wagon a little bit. I said, man, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm going to dial in my nutrition even better. I'm going to quit anything that can stunt my healing. I'm going to prove everybody that I can come back better and stronger. That was my goal and my intentions. And so we get about a month into it, go to check in with my doctor, and I was starting to do a little therapy with just range of motion, my ankle, knee, and hip. And one night I was at John and Carla Harrison's house, and I pulled my leg out of my walking boot, and I felt my leg kind of move, and I could kind of see it, but I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I'm just overthinking it. So
like the fracture moved, it looked like?
And so I call John and Carla over. I said, hey, is my leg moving? And I pull it out of my boot again and put it back in, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think this is right. So I text my doctors, I sent them the video, and they kind of bounced some ideas off me. And, long story short on that, I shortened up my next doctor visit, and I had, I call him, he's my Uncle Cole, but we call him Buckles, Uncle Buckles. I was thankful that he was the one that took me to the doctor. He's one of the most optimistic, positive guys that I've ever known in my life. We get there and get x-rays, and as the doctor's walking into the office, I know what he's fixing to say isn't good. Yeah, it hadn't healed, huh? And he says, you got to have a surgery again. And it just broke my heart. And Buckles, he's sitting there, and he's so optimistic and a positive mindset. He's like, right on, dude. We get to do it again. and that was his mindset. And I was like, are you Cole? Yeah. How can you think that? So I was pretty down and out on the drive home. It was about a 3-hour trip home. And, he can vouch. Like, I was pretty sour. And people are texting me and this and that. I don't want to talk to them. And as we're driving home, I'm thinking, and I'm not questioning God. I've never tried to be a guy like that. I'm just like, man, this is this part of the story, you know? And one of my mentors, Rex Dunn, he was one of the most well-known bullfighters in the industry. He not only worked the finals, but, he really was a big impact on the freestyle world. He raised a lot of bulls, a lot of great bulls, and just was a big icon in the sport of bullfighting. And a lot of great hands to this day come up through him. He told me one thing years ago. He said, you know, life's challenges and adversities are like a flat tire. You can get out and kick dirt and throw rocks and throw your sucker in the dirt, or you can get out and change it and move on. And it was like he spoke to me. As soon as I had that thought come to my mind, I was like, that's right. We're going to change this tire. So right then I got a hold of my family, got hooked up with our family doc. And the next morning I had an appointment, went checked in. He collaborated with the doctor that I just saw. They both had the same mindset. Hey, we got to redo it. We're going to put a bigger rod in, line it up better, and put more supporting screws in it. And I'm like, let's go. And so within the next about 6 days, we had another surgery. So I was like, start all over. Here we go. And at that moment, I remember sitting there at Maury and Nikki's in Apache, Oklahoma. And so here I am focusing on my physical side of my nutrition and everything. And I just thought, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to put this much time and effort in my physical needs, I need to do the same with my mental and my mindset. So I'm not a reader. I've never been big on a reader. And I started diving into books. And a lot of them were different military books. And then I come across You Can't Hurt Me, David, Mr. Goggins himself. And I started reading that, and it just sucked me in. And me and a friend of mine, Carla Harrison, the day that I was released to walk, we both decided we were going to start 75 hard. And I kind of had to wait till I could walk because of the 2 workouts you had to do a day. Had to be a little bit immobile. But anyways, did that. Got to reading his books. Kind of got to seeing some of your stuff. And just the mindset just really helped. I listened to some podcasts with Sean White about the mentality of coming back from injuries and that. And he said one thing one time. He said, you know, when I come back off my injury, I accepted the fact that I could get hurt again and that it could happen. He said, but the sport didn't change. So why am I going to allow it in my mind? And I was like, right on, let's go.
That's the attitude,
This is part of the story. But I promise you, I'm going to be back sooner than what any doctors, anybody said I could. And they were predicting me to be out 6 to 12 months, which I thought was a big gap.
Yeah.
But I come back in 4.5 months and worked my first pro rodeo. So
man,
it was a challenge. It was a grind. It was kind of like that rock today. It sucks, but it was so worth it.
Every step I take, I move my truth. Every time they tell me stop, I use every comment, hate that makes my fuel. Gather up my energy and boom, I hear them talking, saying the way that I move is so reckless. That is a part of my mind I've been blessed with, giving my blood, so I am relentless. My fault, they want someone to blame. They sent their hate, it fuels my pace. I am Roy Tough, I am the change, the fuel in dirt. Feeling like Cam